Welcome to Day 1. We're kicking off today with Perspective by Lisa Young. Introducing this keynote is Dean of the Edward R. Murrow College of Communication, Bruce Pinkleton. During his time at WSU, Dr. Pinkleton has served as head of the Strategic Communication degree program, helping grow the unit into the largest in Murrow College. His research on health promotion, media literacy, and public affairs decision-making in the digital era has been funded by the National Institutes for Health, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, ABMRF, the Foundation for Alcohol Research, the Washington State Department of Health, and other organizations. Dr. Pinkleton's work has been published in Tier 1 journals in communication, health communication, and public health. As Dean, Dr. Pinkleton has established key areas of strategic emphasis for the Murrow College. These areas of emphasis are fostering student success, building collaborative partnerships, advancing excellence in research, and strengthening the internal foundation of the Murrow College. Please welcome Dr. Bruce Pinkleton.
All right, good morning everyone. I'm Bruce Pinkleton, Dean of the Murrow College of Communication. Thank you for being here today. Very excited to get our second day of symposium kicked off. Had a terrific day yesterday with the Professional Advisory Board meeting and time with Maria Hinojosa and the Alumni Association Book Club and a few other events. So this is a big day for us. I was noticing on my way in, I was hearing some news about somebody releasing a new album. Have you guys heard about this? A country album that's not quite a country album. It's like a... No, I'm not talking about Taylor Swift. Come on. Cowboy Carter, I think. Does that ring a bell? Yeah, all right. So I was thinking Cowboy Carter or the Murrow Symposium. What do you think is the most impactful? All right, I'm unbiased, and I'm going Murrow Symposium, all right? Okay. All right, so excited to have you here. We have a great lineup today. It is really exciting, actually. I have to say, I don't know of another communication college in the country that does what we do here. And so it's going to be a terrific day of events. We have keynotes, sessions, workshops, special panels. Please attend. We have professional advisory board members spread throughout the venue. If you see somebody you don't know, introduce yourself, talk to them about who you are and what you're doing, ask questions, get career advice. It's a great opportunity for each of us. I want to start today with a special recognition. We have some students here from Pullman High School, as a matter of fact. They're in Mr. Winchell's media and visual design courses. My daughter had Mr. Winchell, as a matter of fact, and she loved that class. And these students have received a National Student Production Award for live sporting event from the Foundation for the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences. So our PHS students, will you guys stand for me? Right. Awesome. There we go. Super. Thank you so much. You can be seated. So they were chosen from more than 120 schools. Pretty impressive. So great. And welcome to Murrow College. You can just come on over when you're done at PHS, okay? All right. It's my pleasure to introduce you to our opening keynote speaker, Lisa Young. So Lisa is a 2002 Murrow graduate. She told us that one of her favorite memories was volunteering for sports production crew during a Cougar football game. She carried those parabolic mics, you know. It turns out they're heavy. So I wouldn't know, I've not carried one, but she's running the sideline, carrying that mic. She said by halftime, her arms were aching. So she can't even remember who the Cougars played, but she remembers how heavy that mic was. So after graduation, Lisa started her career at an advertising agency in San Diego, a boutique firm. And since then, she worked her way back up to the Pacific Northwest, started with the Seahawks Partnerships Department, is now Vice President of Corporate Partnerships for the Seahawks. We have a lot of students interested in sports marketing, sports communication, sports journalism. So it's really a pleasure to have Lisa join us today. I should note that she also teaches at Seattle University in its Sports and Entertainment MBA program. And her talk today is called Perspective. So Lisa, come on up.
Thank you, Bruce. Good morning. Good morning. Can you hear me okay? All right. I cannot tell you how excited I am to be here. I'm thrilled to be here. I am obviously a very proud graduate of the Edward R. Murrow School of Communication. So when I was asked to participate in Symposium, I definitely had a, are you sure? You want me to come talk? What am I going to talk about? Moment. For reference, Daniel Shore, an Emmy Award-winning journalist who covered world news for over half a century, had a number of awards throughout his career, was the honoree in 2002, the year I graduated. Look him up later, Daniel Shore. That being considered, this event is a big deal. It's a legacy event in our institution, in our industry, with celebrated speakers who you're going to hear a lot from today, award recipients. And so the thought of standing up here as just me in front of a few hundred people was thrilling and admittedly very intimidating as well. So I enthusiastically said yes, and then I thought, what will I share that can perhaps in some way, maybe just a little, inspire this audience as you, some of you, prepare for graduation and your professional careers. What stories do I have to tell that can illuminate how critical it is to have the most excellent communication skills that you've acquired at this institute, and more importantly, perspective, to successfully navigate the human experience both personally and professionally. And then I started a blank page, as we do, for a long time. And a few weeks passed, and it sort of hit me as I was flying down the slopes, the ski slopes with my family, perspective. Webster's, which is a dictionary, I don't know if it still exists, but it is a dictionary, defines perspective as the lens in which we perceive the world, shaping our understanding, our decisions, and our interactions. All of us have it. It's how we use it for good that can change our trajectories. I've had a career journey that I could have only dreamed of. I've been with the same organization for almost 20 years. I credit my career and my success to my parents, first and foremost, and to my WSU education. You are getting the best communication education in the country, if not the world. I'm the daughter of a German immigrant who became an American citizen and started his own communication firm and would introduce me early to the concept of hard work. His advice to me when I graduated was get the job and everything else will follow. And it did just that. I've also been very fortunate to have had supportive, strong leadership and teammates along the way. I'm often asked by both men and women how it feels to be a woman to work in a traditionally male-dominated industry, and I'm still very struck by this question because I recall very few moments where I felt the weight of that. Perhaps it's a little ignorance, or perhaps I just always believed that I belonged, regardless of my sex. Those few moments where I have felt my sex and industry intersect have stuck with me. And as a brief story I want to share, I was at a women's leadership event in Seattle a number of years ago, and Natalie Morales was the keynote speaker. And she asked, it was all women in attendance, she asked everyone to stand. And then she started asking questions like, and asked us to sit. So she said, if anyone was ever passed over for a promotion by a man, sit down. If anyone was ever passed over for a job for someone younger, to sit if anyone ever questioned about the way that they were dressed. And the list of inequities went on. And these questions were to illustrate the many women who've been perhaps impacted by gender bias. I remained standing. And I remember feeling so guilty that I did not have a reason to be called to sit. I was the only one in my row standing. I eventually sat. I don't recall for what, but I knew it wasn't true for me. What I realized was true for me, and that I recognized in that moment is that I really had never thought twice about it, was that I had chosen, perhaps a little subconsciously, to be a part of communities where none of those things would have been tolerated. I've been empowered by incredible women and men, and it's important for me to acknowledge that in times where you hear more about negative experiences by women and others in the workplace. My perspective was that I belonged. That being said, another story, about 6 years ago, I was sitting at a Niall Horan concert. You guys know One Direction? Was this crowd of One Direction fans? Yeah, Niall Horan. Concert in Chicago with my boss and one of my mentors, Amy Sprangers. And we were the oldest people at this concert, sipping on cheap rosé in plastic cups and enjoying ourselves. And during the intermission, she leans over to me and says, you know, you're going to run the department. You're going to run the department next. And I literally looked at her and was like, what? I had another, what? Me? What are you talking about? And at that time, I had been overseeing what we call our activation team. So in sponsorship, you've got the sales side of the business, and then you have the activation side where the team is really bringing all those partnerships to life. And I was overseeing that side of the business. I was not really involved on the sales side. And, you know, I think I genuinely had like a stark look on my face. You know, so why was I so shocked that she said this to me? In our industry sponsorship specifically, leadership typically goes to men. And, you know, my boss, who's our chief revenue officer, she's one of, I think, 3 women in her role, and I'm one of maybe 4 in mine within the NFL. There's 32 teams, so that gives you a little bit of perspective. And I didn't have direct negotiation experience. I didn't believe that I had. So she looked at me and she was very intentional when she said this, and she said something to the effect of, you know, you're selling every day. Whether you're sitting across the negotiation table talking numbers or not, you're selling. You're selling what our property, what in my case, the Seahawks, can do to drive business objectives. You're selling the team, the culture, the history. You are selling. And at that very moment, my entire perspective completely changed. And what I thought my capabilities could be. And that's when I really wanted more than anything for that job. I wanted to earn that job, to lead the department. And since about this time in 2021, I've been doing just that. And I'm definitely not done. One of my favorite quotes by an unknown, I am a lover of words, in part because of this institution, is that you don't come this far just to come this far. And I try to remember that with everything that I do and every effort that I put forward. It's important to illuminate mentors, moments, and stories that move us forward. Perspective is everything. The theme today is illuminating untold stories, which possess the transformative power to shine a light on overlooked perspectives, enriching our understanding of humanity and fostering empathy and connection across diverse experiences. So how do you challenge your perspective? That maybe comes from assumptions. Ignite empathy, and together deepen our understanding of each other's experiences. We can do this by actively listening, questioning our own biases, seeking out new perspectives through conversation, education, experience. Igniting empathy requires us to look beyond our own boundaries, practicing compassion, engaging in conversations that cultivate connection, and getting uncomfortable. We can deepen our understanding of our experience here on this earth by being curious and committing to learn from each other's stories and different perspectives. So how do you tell a good story? Being a good storyteller involves several key elements, but not limited to. Being authentic, buzzword of today, being authentic. Sharing stories that are genuine and resonate with your own experiences and emotions. Engagement, capturing your audience through compelling narratives, vivid descriptions, maybe a few little voices here and there, and a relatable protagonist or situation. Clarity, delivering your story in a clear and concise manner so the audience can follow along. Emotion, infuse your stories with emotion to evoke empathy and connection. Structure, which I think is the most important, and I'm sure all your professors would agree. The basics, have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Practice, prepare, seek feedback, edit constantly with the goal to always captivate and move your listeners or your audience. It's a dream of mine to be a paid storyteller someday, to write and publish a book. I have to continue to emphasize and publish when I say this out loud so that I don't get lazy with this big goal, big personal goal of mine. So in trying to accomplish this, I've been reading a lot of books about how to write. And I recently read Stephen King's book. It's called On Writing. I highly recommend it, whether you want to be a writer or not. I think it would support many of the principles that you are learning here in Edward R. Murrow as well. But he says throughout his book to write and talk about what you know and apply it to all things. So I've tried to apply that in my everyday communications, whether it's an email or a conversation or a story. I know how to communicate, and I know how to ski. And so bringing those two things together, I often tell my husband, he's also a Coug, I could have been Lindsey Vonn if my parents had just pushed me a little bit harder. And he rolls his eyes almost every time, but I feel like he believes it could have been, potentially. Any skiers or snowboarders here? I think I heard some conversation here earlier. So I like to relate skiing to my day job. Skiing and negotiations, sponsorship, because I'm in a revenue generating role. They both require strategy, balance, adaptability. Just as skiers navigate terrain and obstacles, negotiators have to maneuver through various challenges, seeking mutually beneficial outcomes like not crashing or winning the race. Both pursuits involve assessing risk, making quick but thoughtful decisions, and adjusting tactics based on changing circumstances. Success often hinges on effective communication and maintaining control under pressure, problem solving. Whenever I'm in a challenging, so why am I talking about skiing? Whenever I'm in a challenging situation in my job, I try to think about, what I would do if I was on the slopes, if I'm on a double black diamond with no tracks and a lot of trees, and I imagine myself, how am I going to get through that? How am I going to get through that run without, crashing into a tree, navigating down the run? So I imagine myself taking my time, dodging and weaving the trees with a smile on my face, and stopping at nothing to get to the bottom. Sometimes it takes a little more self-talk, may take a rest break to catch my breath. Sometimes it takes a few laughs, sometimes some wrong turns before you can course correct. But no matter how you get there, when you reach the bottom, it feels amazing. You've solved a problem. One of my most favorite life moments, besides having two awesome, beautiful future Coug children, was making it to the bottom of an out-of-bounds run at a little ski resort. I wouldn't even call it a resort. If any of you are familiar with Powder Mountain in Utah, has anybody ever been there before? It's not a resort, and I don't think there's any bathrooms. But if you're a skier, it's a special place. I highly recommend it. And my best friend and I went off. We thought, we're going to go off course with her two teenage sons, and they're like, follow my line. And so, she's on a snowboard, and we're behind them, and they take off, and we're kind of left in the dust. And it was so. I remember how quiet it was, and we're just thinking, how in the world are we going to get to the bottom? And the guy told us, look for the gully, and then there'll be the road, and you get on the bus and come back up. I mean, it was hilarious. And so we had to laugh our way to the bottom, and we took our time, and we both fell a lot in really deep snow, had to avoid a few tree wells, but we got to the bottom. And there's this picture, I have this picture, I should have brought it, of her and I. We took a selfie, and we were just laughing, covered in snow, just smiling, and it's one of my most favorite memories. But it stuck with me because we literally had to assess the risk. We had to stay upright, and we had to get to the bottom so that we could rejoin our families. Setbacks. We all have them, and I have had many, both on and off the slopes. But I believe that I'm still standing. I believe that I've had an almost 20-year career with the same organization because of how I've handled them. Accountability is also everything. One big mistake I made, I was thinking of funny stories I could share with this group, so this was a big mistake. It could have actually led to a monetary fine for our organization. It was about 11 or 12 years ago, and I got a call from our friends in PR that one of our players wanted to bring a bottle of Martinelli's, which is sparkling cider, if you don't know what it is, to his press conference to celebrate his contract extension. So I get this call, no one's around, and I said, yeah, absolutely, no problem. And I'm thinking in my brain, it's not alcohol, which you can't have at a press conference, and we don't have another sparkling cider partner, so there's no conflict. So great, go, good, do it. So the press conference happens, he pops this bottle of Martinelli's, and then we get a call. I get a call. We were not good. I was in such a hurry to answer the question and be the problem solver for our PR team that I failed to acknowledge that there was actually a policy in place that the only beverage that you could have on the press on the press conference table was a Gatorade product. So while we didn't have a sparkling cider and it wasn't alcohol, it wasn't a Gatorade product. So I got an earful. My heart sank, because it was a totally avoidable situation. What I learned several things from this. It's okay to take a moment to respond. It's okay if you don't know the answer and you need to go find the right answer. And it's okay to collect feedback. I work in a team environment a lot. This industry, most of your roles are going to be within a team environment, and that's intentional because no one person has all the answers. So what I should have done was consult a colleague, like, what am I not thinking of? What holes can I poke in this to make sure that we're okay? Being the first person to respond only matters if you're a first responder. It made me a more collaborative teammate. It also made me realize that I do not need to be the smartest person in the room. I don't need to be the first person to finish the test, if that sounds familiar. It's okay that I don't have all the answers all the time. As I wrap things up, a few words to the wise that I've collected along the way that I wanted to pass along. Come as you are. It's one of our organization's 12 principles, and it's a big one. It's probably the most important one. Your influence on others matters, no matter what role you're in. My boss, who I referenced earlier, often says, lead where you are. It doesn't matter if you're a vice president, a president, a manager, a coordinator, an intern. Lead from where you are, and your influence matters on all levels. It also matters to illuminate positive and collaborative work environments and supportive and strong leaders. There's too much negativity out there, and there's a lot of good work being done in my industry and others, and it's important to tell those stories. It's important to acknowledge those people. No job is ever without its challenges, obstacles, and setbacks. You will make mistakes, but it will be how you respond after that will determine your trajectory or determine how you get to the bottom of the run. Be vulnerable. It's okay to be vulnerable. And always be accountable. Say yes. Choose every time to go a little extra. As the 20-somethings say, be extra. Is that what they say? Be extra, right? Go extra. Even if you're scared. I was scared to come up here and talk, and I don't see anybody sleeping, so that's good. But being scared is okay. It'll give you a little adrenaline to move forward. Corporate diplomacy, which is a word I feel that I should trademark, is a skill that's learned through making mistakes and learning how to communicate along the way. Your internal relationships with your colleagues are just as, if not more important than your relationships with external, whether it's a partner or a vendor or whatever the relationship may be. Maintain your most excellent communication skills. Read, write every day. It's so important. Have self-awareness. Know who you are. If you don't know what an enneagram is, I encourage you to figure out what your number is. I'm a number 3. Read Color Code. Malcolm Gladwell. I'm a connector. If anybody's read Malcolm Gladwell, that's my lane. But know who you are and know how you interact with others. It will help you communicate better, and it will help you pick up on other social cues as you navigate your professional and your personal lives. Don't apologize. Problem solve. Intentional dialogue and positioning will be a beacon. And you're going to learn so much. Depending on what year you are learning that, or you have learned that already from these incredible professors that you have. Say hello and smile to everyone. Everybody matters. Go for no, which is one of my favorite sayings. One of my dear friends, who's also a Coug and a really kick-ass saleswoman, I've adopted her mantra and shared it along the way. And if people trust you, you can ask them for things. And the worst they can say is no, because they trust you and they know where you're coming from. Build genuine relationships. In our industry, people buy stuff from people they like, people they trust, people that are genuine. Know your clients or your partners, know their partners' names, know their kids' names, know who their favorite team is, know if they're a cougar or a husky. It's important. Dress for the part that you want. It's important to dress for the part you want. It's okay to have notes. I've got lots. And it's important to understand that when you are working in a team environment, not all parties are going to have the same priority as you, and that's okay. All priorities are different, and I tell our team all the time, we're no one else. Corporate partners, we're no one else's priority but our own, and that's okay. And it can all be true. Always have a copy of the latest AP style guide by your side, because grammar matters. It does. A comma can completely change the world. Don't forget that. And finally, one of my personal rules that I have broken, but I try to maintain, is never use more than 2 exclamation points in an email. Thank you. Does any... I don't think that's an actual AP rule. It's just my personal rule. Does anybody have any questions? I don't know anything about who we're drafting or any transactions, so don't ask me that.
Hi. Hi, my name is Kara Hawkins-Jedlicka. I am a professor here at the Murrow College of Communication, and my research deals with name, image, and likeness. So in your role, how much is name, image, and likeness impacting what you're seeing from collegiate players to athletes at the pro level, and how is it kind of changing what you do?
That's a really good question, and I'll be honest, it's evolving. We have not seen an impact from our perspective, but what we are seeing is more agents are reaching out proactively before players are even drafted to try and establish a relationship with our department, because they want to continue to cultivate those sponsorship relationships for the players, which isn't a space that I work in. Where corporate partners is business relationships on behalf of the Seahawks. The players are completely separate, and sometimes they intersect, and most of the time they don't. So we're starting to see more conversation around how can that be a more collaborative environment. But it is interesting. There's a lot more endorsement deals coming around, which does pose some challenges for us, especially if we have a partner a player who's working with a brand that is not a team partner. There's some dynamics there that can be very challenging. But I hope that somebody figures out how to manage it, because it feels like it's a little bit of a runaway train.
I could go ahead and ask, yeah. So during your speech, you talked a lot about collaborating with teams and working with teams. What is your advice for working with a difficult team and having maybe a problem child, and how to kind of work through that together?
That's a great question, and that goes back to my corporate diplomacy is very important. Somebody, if anybody knows Mike Flood, he's a Coug. He's been with the Seahawks for a long time. And he asked me the other day, he was like, how are you feeling about your role, and what's going on? And I'm like, I feel like I'm a corporate diplomat. I have an excellent that being said, I have a really great relationship with my counterparts. However, everybody's priorities are different. And so I think it's really important to meet. So let's say it's a partnership, and PR coming together to collaborate, and we don't see eye to eye. we have to kind of take a step back and understand what is PR's priorities? What are our priorities, and how do we meet in the middle? It's negotiating. And sometimes it's not necessarily the outcome that you want, but you have to meet people where they are. You really do, and you have to ask questions and listen and be thoughtful. You can't come in a bowl in a china shop. It just doesn't work, especially in my space where corporate partners often comes with a little bit of a stigma of they're gonna sell anything, and everybody else has to figure it out. And that's not how we function at our organization at all. But it is something that we have to overcome.
Okay. We're going. Hi, my name is Courtney Crabtree. I'm a Wazoo alumni. My question is, what would be your best advice for women in a male-dominated field? And what's something that you've learned from being a woman in a male-dominated field?
Don't acknowledge that you're the woman in a male-dominated field. Walk in confidently. Walk in like you know just as much as they do. And for me, and I took this advice from my boss too, and it's worked well for me. Don't just talk to talk. Don't contribute just to contribute because you're the only woman in the room. Listen and contribute when you have something meaningful to contribute. Being a quiet assassin, if you will, is more impactful than trying to compete with a room. So I always like to say, come as you are, be confident. It doesn't matter, man, woman, tenured or not. I'm also in an environment where there's a lot of tenure. And so I think it's just really important to come as you are and be confident. And it's hard. Sometimes it can be really deflating when you walk into a room and you're the only gal in the room, but I think it's actually really awesome. I like being the only girl in the room sometimes.
I have a quick question. I loved what you said about don't apologize, problem solve. And I was wondering if there was a specific moment that really came true for you, because I tend to be the one who's always apologizing as well.
Yeah, I can't recall the specific occurrence, but I'm an apologizer. I'm a people pleaser. I want everybody to be happy and having a good time and yay. And with that sometimes comes that, oh, I'm sorry if I made you mad, or I'm sorry if I did this wrong. And someone told me, and I don't remember who it was to be honest, but somebody told me along the way, like, you apologize too much. That's not a compliment. And I really sort of took a step back to evaluate, why am I apologizing? Is that just my intuitive reaction if I think I've made somebody mad? And I changed my mindset. Like, why? I will apologize if I've done something really awful, but generally I like to take the approach of, let's figure out a solution. We're in a business where we can't apologize to our partners because they could come back to us and say, we want you to prorate our partnership. And there's a revenue implication there. So I'm not saying not to admit when there's a fault, but to work around it and come up with meaningful solutions and approaching everything with that problem-solving mindset versus like, oh, I screwed this up, I'm so sorry. It's, you know what, we made a mistake and here's how we're gonna fix it. I think it's all in how you position it. Anybody else? They're gonna make you work, Hannah.
Cardio for the day. Kelly.
Hi, I'm Kelly Weber, and I am a senior here, graduating in May.
Yay,
Go
congrats.
Cougs. Risk and crisis communication. So I really appreciated you talking about vulnerability. And so would you be willing to share maybe a vulnerable position that you've been in that changed everything in a split second?
Oh man, that's a really good question. I'm sure there's been many. I think, so I would pair vulnerability and accountability kind of together. Actually, a recent, like I said, I make lots of mistakes. I do a lot of awesome things too, but I do make some mistakes. Yeah, recently, so we report, I'm in a revenue department, we report numbers all of the time. And I didn't double check something and I sent the wrong figure and it went all the way up. And I was so mad at myself because again, it was something so avoidable. And I kind of had to be vulnerable and accountable in that moment and just say, I sent you the wrong information. It will not happen again. And it sucked, but I didn't get reprimanded for it. I wasn't chastised for it. And I think what my boss perhaps appreciated about that was, I made a mistake and I'm admitting it, and it won't happen again. And it won't happen again. There's probably other examples that are more compelling, but that's probably the most recent thing. I think being vulnerable and being accountable kind of come together.
So you mentioned that you'd been with the organization for just over 20 years, 20 plus years?
20 years in February. I'm on my 20th season. We count in seasons.
That's amazing. That being said, I'm curious, because I think a lot of us are curious, especially if you're interested in going into a field similar to yours or working for an organization like the Seahawks. What did that journey look like for you, and what are some of the positions that some of these recent graduates and things can, look into or, kind of look for as they're entering the job market?
Yeah, I think, I've talked to a few students earlier today applying for internships. I think we have over 30 in a variety of different areas of our business, both on the football side and the business side. I think being willing to participate in an internship that maybe isn't necessarily what your end goal is, but it's a way to get in the organization and network and meet people. I think that's really important to consider, especially when you're seeking an internship. Similarly, with a full-time job as you're coming out of college, I started as a coordinator in our department, and I just kept saying yes. That's why I tell my best top advice is say yes. Even if it means you're working twice as long, you have to stay twice as long, you have to do things that are nowhere even remotely close to part of your job description, do it and say yes, because if you have good leadership in an organization, you will be rewarded for that at some point. And honestly, that is how I am standing here. I said yes to everything. I asked a lot of questions. I wanted to learn about things. People included me. I wasn't knocking on the door saying I wanted a promotion every 5 seconds. It was, I was patient and I was thoughtful with my approach on how I wanted my career to go. And I think it's really important that you have, people talk a lot about mentorship. Whether you have a formal mentor relationship or you've just identified somebody that you trust, that is a good thing, and that will help you. And staying neutral, I think, is really important too. Asking a lot of questions and doing a lot of listening. But I said yes to everything, even to things. I remember they asked me to take on signage when somebody went out on maternity leave, and I'm like, I don't know anything about signage. I don't know about LED lights and, all these things that just totally not part of my world. I'm like, I can hold a parab dish, but I don't know anything about signage. And I learned, and it actually helped me along the way because I established really strong relationships with our vendors. So quick funny story, because I don't want to go over time. During the pandemic, we rebranded our building from CenturyLink Field to Lumen Field. And there's a sign in the end zone that was backlit, and we were watching from home because we weren't permitted to be in the building. And I could see during the pregame that one of the letters was out. And I had to call, and we called our signage partner and panicked and we're like, kickoff's in 30 minutes, like the light's not working, like you gotta have it lit, because this was like our debut of Lumen Field. And we called them and they went and they fixed it before kickoff. But if they didn't like us, if we didn't have that relationship, there's no way that would have gotten done. So I like to talk about my signage example because while it seems random, it's actually very relevant. So that was my very long-winded answer just to say yes. Yeah. Cool. Thank you so much for your time. Go Cougs!
All right, Lisa, that was terrific. Thank you so much. Appreciated that, and love the skiing analogy. I want everyone here to know I've had 5 surgeries. I've been in Pullman for 31 years. 5 surgeries, 4 of them related to skiing. Shoulder, elbow, knee. So there you go. My goal is to be able to walk into my 80s, so I'm starting to slow down just a little bit, but we should talk slopes at some point. Anyway, we have an outstanding symposium. It's a great way to get the symposium started today. Our panels are starting in just a few minutes. If you circulate, you'll see what's going on. We also have some posters in the back of the room. So take some time. There's coffee and stuff over there. There may be some more food over there. Find where you need to go and get there and be prepared to have a great day. Thank you, everyone.